हेलो गाइस, वेलकम बैक टू माय चैनल फाइनेंशियल लेसन विद संजय जगधारे। और आज मैं आपके साथ फाइनेंशियल लेसन नंबर 4 शेयर करने जा रहा हूँ फ्रॉम द बुक द पावर ऑफ हैबिट, वाई डू वी वट वी डू एंड हाउ टू चेंज, रिटन बाय चार्ल्स ड्यूहिग. सो लेट्स स्टार्ट. सो हेलो गाइस, लेट्स स्टार्ट. सो चैप्टर 4 का नाम है कीस्टोन हैबिट्स और दी बैलेट्स ऑफ पॉल ओनी. Which habits matter most? On a blustery October day in 1987, a herd of prominent Wall Street investors and stock analysts gathered in the ballroom of a posh Manhattan hotel. They were there to meet the new CEO of the Aluminium Company of America, or ALOCA, as it was known, a corporation that for nearly a century had manufactured everything from the foil that wraps Hershey's Kisses and the metal in Coca-Cola cans to the bolts that hold satellites together. Alcoa's founder had invented the process for smelting aluminium for a century earlier, and since then the company had become one of the largest on earth. Many of the people in the audience had invested millions of dollars in the Alcoa stock and had enjoyed a steady return. In the past year, however, investor grumbling started. Alcoa's management had made misstep after misstep, unwisely trying to expand into new product lines, which while competitors stole consumers and profits away. So there had been a palpable sense of relief when Alcoa's board announced it was time for a new leadership. That relief, though, turned to unease when the choice was announced. The new CEO would be a former government bureaucrat named Paul O'Neill. Many on Wall Street had never heard of him. When Alcoa scheduled this meet and greet at Manhattan Ballroom, every major investor asked for an invitation. A few minutes before noon, O'Neill took the stage. He was 51 years old, trim and dressed in grey Princeton's and a red power tie. His hair was white and his um, posture military straight. He bounced up the step and smiled warmly. He looked dignified, solid, confident, like a chief executive. Then he opened his mouth. I want to talk to you about workers' safety, he said. Every year, numerous Alcoa workers are injured so badly that they miss a day of work. Our safety record is better than the general American workforce, especially considering that our employees work with metal are 1500 degrees and machines that can rip a man's arm off. But it's not good enough. I intend to make Alcoa the safest company in America. I intend to go for zero injuries. The audience was confused. These meetings usually folded a predictable script. A new CEO would start with an introduction, make a Fox self-deprecating joke, something about how he slept his way through Harvard Business School, then promise to boost profits and lower cost. Next would come an exhaustion of taxes, business regulation, and sometimes with a favor that suggested first-hand experience in diverse court lawyers. Finally, the speech would end with a blizzard of buzzwords, synergy, right sizing, and cooperation, at which point everyone could return to their offices, reassured their capitalism was saved for another day. O'Neill hadn't said anything about profits. He didn't mention taxes. There was no talk of using alignment to achieve a win-win synergic market advantage. For all anyone in the audience knew, given his talk of workers' safety, O'Neill might be regulation or worse, a Democrat. It was a terrifying prospect. Now, before I go any further, I want to point out the safety exists in this room. He gestured to the rear of the ballroom. There is a couple of doors in the backs, and in the unlikely event of a fire or emergency, you should calmly walk out, go down the stairs to the lobby, and leave the building. Silence. The only noise was the hum of traffic through the windows. Safety, fire exit? Was this a joke? One investor in the audience knew that O'Neill had been in Washington DC during the 60s. Guy must have done a lot of drugs, he thought. Eventually, someone raised his hand and asked about the investors in the aerospace division. Another asked about company's capital ratio. I'm not certain you heard me, O'Neill said. If you want to understand how Aloka is doing, you need to look at our workplace safety design, safety figures. If we bring our injury rate down, it won't be because of cheerleading or the nonsense you sometimes hear from other CEO. It will be because the individuals at this company have agreed to become part of something important. They have devoted themselves to creating a habit of excellence. Safety will be an indicator that we are making progress in changing our habits across the entire institution. That's how we should be judged. The investor in the room almost stammered out the room when the presentation ended. One jogged to the lobby, found a payphone, and called his 20 large clients. I said, the board put a crazy hippie in charge and he's going to kill the company. The investor told me. I ordered them to sell their stock immediately. Before everyone in the room started calling their clients and telling them the same thing, it was literally the worst piece of advice I gave in my entire career. Within a year of O'Neill's speech, Aloka's profit would hit a record high. By the time O'Neill retired in 2000, the company's annual net income was 5 times larger than before he arrived, and its market capitalism had risen by 27 billion. Someone who had invested $1 million in Aloka on the day Noel was hired would have earned another $1 million in dividends when he headed the company, and the value of their stock would be 5 times bigger when he left. What's more, all that growth occurred while Aloka became one of the safest company in the world. Before O'Neill's arrival, almost every Aloka plant had at least one accident per week. Once his safety plan was implemented, some facilities would go years without a single employee losing a day due to an accident. The company's workers' injury rate fell to 120 to the US average. So, how did O'Neill make one of the largest, sturdiest, and most potentially dangerous companies into a profit machine and uh, bastion of bastion of safety? By attacking one habit and then watching the changes ripple through the organization. I knew I had to transform Aloka, Noel told me. But you can't order people to change. That's not how the brain works. So I decided I was going to start focusing on one thing. If I could start disrupting the habits around one thing, it would spread throughout the entire company. Owen believed that some habits have the power to start a chain reaction, changing other habits as they move through an organization. Some habits, in other words, matter more than the others in remaking business and lives. They are keystone habits, and they can influence how people work, eat, play, spend, and communicate. Keystone habits starts a process that over time transforms everything. Keystone habits say that success do not depend on getting every single thing right, but instead relies on identifying a few key points, priorities, and fashioning them into powerful levers. दिस सो इसके अंदर ये समझाने की कोशिश करें कीस्टोन हैबिट्स में कि आप कोई अपनी जो एक बुरी आदत है उसको ठीक कर लोगे तो एक किसी तरीके का चेन रिएक्शन चलेगा जिससे आपकी दूसरी आदतों से आपको प्रॉफिट होने लगेगा, आपकी लाइफ बेटर होने लगेगी. सो ये इसमें समझाने की कोशिश करें. इफ़ यू लाइक दिस प्लीज़ लाइक एंड सब्सक्राइब. थैंक यू.